Hey, PMS Jess, are you sure you want to drink that wine right now? Yeah, I'm frustrated, a little emotional, and I need something to help me chillax. But what if I told you that drinking alcohol right now, like at this exact time in your cycle, is actually gonna prolong your PMS? Higher self Jess, why do you have to be such a buzzkill? Am I a buzzkill or am I your best friend? You know those last few days before your period where your PMS symptoms are at its peak? Your irritability increases a notch or two. Maybe you're extra fatigued or having other physical symptoms. Maybe if you struggle with PMDD, this is a time of heightened mood swings, anxiety, depression, or other mental health lows. So whether your PMS lasts for a few days or an entire week, having a glass of wine doesn't seem like such a bad choice, especially if we have an association with it providing us some sort of mental escape. But what is it doing to us physically? Analyzing 19 previously published studies on alcohol and PMS, researchers found that the risk for PMS was 45% higher in women who reported drinking than in non-drinkers, while women who had more than one drink a day were 79% more likely to have PMS symptoms than non-drinkers. I think because we're dealing with so much during this time and kind of accustomed to feeling awful, it can be really hard to tell if something external is making our symptoms even worse. So today I want to unveil why alcohol both heightens and prolongs PMS symptoms, but more importantly, how to use this information to develop a relationship with alcohol that's going to be more aligned with your cycle so that if you do choose to drink, it will be the most supportive it can be of both your hormonal and mental health. And hopefully understanding what we're about to go over will help you as much as it's helped me personally with my PMS and PMDD symptoms. So in order to understand how alcohol is going to impact our hormones, our cycle, and PMS, we need a foundational understanding of what's happening with our hormones throughout the menstrual cycle. Don't worry, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. During the first half of your cycle, the follicular phase, which is generally days like 1 to 14, estrogen slowly rises until it reaches its peak right before ovulation. During this window, testosterone also rises for a few days before reaching that peak around the same time. This is when many people, including myself, generally feel pretty good. Now your luteal phase, which is generally day 15 through 28 or up until you get your period, is when progesterone slowly starts to rise after ovulation. Essentially, if fertilization does not occur, meaning that you're not pregnant, you'll start having a decline in progesterone levels as well as estrogen, which triggers menstruation or the shedding of the lining. Now, your luteal phase is going to vary for everyone in terms of how awful it is, but whether your whole luteal phase is a complete downward spiral or it's really just a few days that you feel awful, when we look at this chart here, we can see that the peak time of PMS for most of our hormones should be decreasing before we get our period. What happens when we drink alcohol is that it's going to disrupt this phase and flow because it can increase circulating estrogen levels. So your liver, as you're likely aware, is a primary organ in detoxifying and processing alcohol. But did you know that your liver plays a crucial role in detoxifying circulating hormones, especially estrogen, through the process of metabolism? Liver cells metabolize hormones into less active forms to facilitate their elimination from the body. This detoxification process helps maintain hormonal balance and prevents the accumulation of excess hormones. But when you drink alcohol, your liver prioritizes detoxifying the alcohol because it's a pretty toxic compound, and it keeps your liver pretty busy. So instead of breaking down hormones prior to or during your period, Your liver is distracted dealing with processing alcohol. Basically, at the time of the month where your body really wants to focus on this one thing, you're essentially diverting attention elsewhere. And if this ends up either increasing your overall circulation of hormones or prolonging the period in which these hormones are circulating, then you're simultaneously prolonging your PMS state. Who wants that? While it's important to note that the effects of alcohol on estrogen levels can vary depending on many factors, such as the amount and frequency of alcohol consumed, individual metabolism, hormonal balance, and overall health status, moderate alcohol consumption has been linked to higher estrogen levels and lower circulating progesterone levels in menstruating women. One study found an increase in estrogen, testosterone, and luteinizing hormone after just one drink. In addition to alcohol making it difficult for your body to detoxify hormones and focus on what it's supposed to be doing, alcohol has several other ways in which it can definitely increase the severity of your PMS symptoms. Here are 3 of them. Number 1, dehydration. Alcohol is a diuretic, which means that it's going to increase urine production and potentially lead to dehydration. Dehydration can exacerbate symptoms of PMS, such as bloating, headaches, and breast tenderness. Number 2, the effect that alcohol has on your mood. You may or may not be aware of the fact that alcohol is actually a depressant. Alcohol affects neurotransmitters in the brain, including serotonin, and these alterations can lead to mood swings, anxiety, depression, and ultimately an increase in PMS symptoms. As someone with pretty sensitive brain chemistry, I know that whenever I drink alcohol, I'm going to experience a little bit of a depressed mood the next day. For me, I've come to a place of kind of accepting this, and I'm able to deal with it pretty well because I know that it's only going to last a day or two, and that's really the reason why. But that being said, it's definitely something that I'm going to avoid during the PMS window when I'm already hypersensitive. And number 3 is sleep disruption. You likely have the experience of wine making you very sleepy and yet also giving you insomnia at the same time. This could partially be due to the process of detox, which sometimes can be stimulating for people and keep them up, but a lot of the times it just has to do with blood sugar and alcohol having a huge impact on our blood sugar that leads to surges and then hypoglycemic crashes that will then wake us up. Poor quality sleep 100% worsens symptoms of things like fatigue and irritability. And although we've been discussing why you may want to avoid alcohol during your PMS window, if you're someone who experiences heavy bleeding or cramping, you'll likely want to avoid alcohol while you're bleeding as well. Although alcohol is associated with reducing physical pain, alcohol actually increases prostaglandin levels because it's a diuretic, which ultimately worsens period cramping. Alcohol also depletes magnesium, which is the opposite of what we want for cramping. Higher self Jess, you know that once I know something, I can't unknow it, so you've pretty much ruined this for me. When is an ideal time then to have alcohol during your cycle? I'm so glad you asked. For most females, the follicular phase is more ideal because remember, this is the time where your estrogen levels are building. So if you're increasing your estrogen levels through drinking alcohol or just slowing down estrogen metabolism, it's a little bit more in alignment with that natural cycle and what your hormones are doing during this time. The caveat to this, of course, is that if you have estrogen dominance patterns, then alcohol may always contribute to this type of hormonal imbalance regardless of where you're at in your cycle. When this is the case, a lot of women will often have symptoms during ovulation that are pretty similar to PMS because this is when estrogen is peaking, right? So if that is the case, I would definitely want to avoid alcohol during that window as well. I personally feel my best during ovulation moderation, and while I generally prefer any alcohol consumption during the follicular phase in general, I can get away with having a small amount of alcohol early on in the luteal phase or second half of my cycle, so long as I'm participating in activities that help with hormone metabolism. So for me, those are activities that help me sweat, like hot yoga and spending a lot of time in the sauna. Because if you're able to give yourself a few days that are supportive of your hormones with activities like I just mentioned, that may aid in detox and overall stress reduction, your body will respond by pushing you through that PMS window quicker with hopefully a little less trauma. Jess, are you gonna share that chocolate with me? If you're a human who experiences pretty significant PMS and you haven't watched my video yet on PMS versus PMDD, then I highly recommend you check that out, and hopefully I'll see you in that one.